Welcome to the 36th edition of Women's Wrestling Weekly, the show. I'm Kyle Klingman, joined by Scott Beck. Scott, levels again, levels talk. We have to talk levels because I was at a camp with 1,300 individuals, boys and girls, and it really reinforces the levels conversation because the people we talk about on this show, or naturally as we talk about wrestling, they're at the top of the top of the top. We're talking about national team members and people that are going for that World Olympic. It was different because we talk about it so much. You just have to get refreshed occasionally that isn't the goal for a lot of people. A lot of these kids, they wanted to go on the slides, and not saying you can't do that if you are aspiring to be a world and Olympic champion, but it just was a refresher for me that not everyone's going for maybe even a state championship or a national championship. They just love the sport or they want to be in the sport. They need an identity in the sport. And so to be around that, it was a good reminder that to even be mentioned as we talk about people on this show, that's pretty rarefied air to talk about someone as we talk about levels conversations.
Yeah, I mean, we're really talking about the best people. I mean, and most are not expecting to make World Olympic teams or even maybe wrestle in college. And they just like it in high school or junior high school, part of the team, the camaraderie. They like the physical elements of it. I mean, yeah, as a little kid, I was obsessed with wrestling, and all I wanted to do was, make the Olympics. And then you realize at some point when you see somebody like Mark Schwab in your weight class just rip through everybody at junior nationals, there's levels, and you're never gonna do that. Maybe, at wrestling college, you're thinking maybe I can somehow, squeak to an NCAA place, maybe, or like maybe qualify for NCAA. So you soon realize that there are people that just annihilate people. And I always told the story about this when, Kevin Jackson was an absolute hammer, but in New York, there was a guy named Glenn Lanham. He's a Duke coach, and I watched him literally throw everybody in New York around like a baby. Then we went to the Eastern Regionals, I think at East Stroudsburg. And, I actually had a good tournament. I actually pinned Sean O'Day in that tournament, who was a national champ, but I took second. And I watched Glenn Lanham wrestle Kevin Jackson and literally get thrown around like a baby. So here's a guy I thought was as good as it possibly could get, and you watch him get massacred. And that's when I would wrestle some of the top people and just get annihilated. You're like, there's levels to this stuff. But that doesn't mean, it's not good to do this, or, that people don't have dreams. And, some people develop late. You never know how things turn out. But yes, for the most part, most people are not making World Olympic teams. Most people probably won't even wrestle in college. I think, from the women's perspective, there are tremendous opportunities, though, to wrestle in college, especially as the landscape's expanding. And that alone, just, when we talk about it, builds character. It can be, fun when you're not, going through a miserable period of, injuries or cutting weight. But, it's bigger than just, the top level. But naturally, we tend to focus on that. Just like on the sports on the news, they're not talking about people that are, for the most part, they're talking about professional athletes that are the best of the best. They're not really talking about people, competing in high school, for the most part.
Yeah, you're not talking about the guy shooting hoops down the road and maybe they're on a small local high school basketball team or wrestling team. But I love that part of the sport because it is maybe the best part of the sport because it really does implement the skills that you see long term. And how many times do we talk about that? But it's worth reinforcing that they're probably gaining as much or more than the ones that are at the top level because of the values and what they have to fight through and all those great things.
Yep, here we go with the trite statement, once you've wrestled, everything else is easy. And I stand by that statement, as I would argue most people that have wrestled would say. So it does build character, builds a lot of skills in terms of confidence, camaraderie, learning how to grow, learning how to be disciplined, work on things, health issues, from just learning diet, nutrition, exercise. So it's by far the best sport.
And as we think about levels and how you jump levels, just the high schoolers that we continue to mention, Jacqueline Mazakis, Taina Fernandez, Everest Lidecker reaches Final X. Talk about that rarefied air of getting to that level when you're in high school. That just really doesn't happen that often, if ever. But there's someone that got under your radar recently, and that's Aubre Krazer, who won the Grand Prix of Spain. She's just getting out of high school. She's going to go to Lehigh University, but I think Brazil Marquez has a gem. I think she's going to be able to make it to that next level, and she's going to be on the U20 world team, but winning her first senior level world gold medal over a couple quality opponents, I think she's on the right track.
Yeah, I mean, she was on my radar before. I watched her wrestle a couple times. She's really good. I didn't know where she was. I don't know if she's wrestled internationally before. I'm not sure because I didn't see a profile on UWW. But I didn't see these matches, so you always like to see the matches before you make like these statements. But she was in a tough weight class at the Grand Prix of Spain and did exceptionally well. I mean, she won the tournament, but she took out in the semifinals. She wrote, I'm going to butcher the name, Haylie Jaffe from Norway, who is a world silver medalist, young, and she looked really good. I watched her matches at the World Championships, and she was really good. And she beat some good people to take a silver and wrestled good people really tough. I mean, to take bronze and wrestle really people tough. And then the final, she beat Juita Riesin from Poland, who's a world bronze medalist as well. She's up a couple of weights. She, I think, was all the way down to 53 at one point, but normally it's a 57. Sometimes wrestled at 59, but like those are two for Crazer. She teched Hui. I mean, I'd love to see the match. I'm sure we'll find it at some point. I mean, she beat really good people, so she's the real deal. And I expect her. I don't know who Japan's sending the U20s. I'm sure they have some hammer, but she will compete for a medal, if not win, in my opinion, just based on me watching her wrestle earlier. And these are serious results.
Serious results, serious mentality. She got beat by Taina Fernandez at Beast of the. But here's the thing about that. She moves up a weight class to get the competition. She's not protecting anything. And
Love
in
it.
order to reach levels, you have to do those types of things. So getting second or first at Beast of the East is irrelevant. It's about how you get the competition. Taina Fernandez, as we said, is at a different level right now in high school.
God knows how good she is
I know.
because
Yeah.
she's beating Crazer, and we barely have ever seen her lose a couple of times, but to like serious seniors, and so Fernandez is just a hammer. Crazer's a hammer. The youth movement is alive and well.
It feels like we do have some momentum at these weight classes. I think one of the more interesting results for me was Haylie Jaffe wrestling Esther Kolawole, who was at William Penn. She won the NAIA championships, got tech, but she actually talked about wrestling her at the North Central Open and what she learned wrestling her again.
I wrestled the same girl that I wrestled at the, I think it was the North Central Open or one of the opens, and just like seeing where I can like improve and like try to get. I'm pretty sure I'll probably see her again, so hopefully I can like wrestle her again and like to continue to improve and like use those mistakes to like improve myself.
And it's good that you got to wrestle again, got teched again, but still, it's great competition. We'll get Jaffe only better. It was a funny tournament because like this Grand Prix, 57 kilos, Beauregard from Canada, who's a four-time Pan Am gold medalist, swept with young Mia Friesen took bronze and Gabrielle Cross silver. But it was all Canada, and I hate that when you go overseas and you wrestle only, your country or first round you wrestle your country. But a lot of the weights, you had a lot of Polish wrestlers, Kolawole from Nigeria. You had some Czech wrestlers. Jordan Faust lost to a wrestler from Czech Republic at 68 in the finals. So good job. Only four athletes, but they represented the U.S. very well there, and they're young athletes. I believe they were all U20 World Team members. I could be wrong, but this is good. And Coach, Marquez took them over, and I think this is good stuff. And it's great to get them some international experience before the U20 Worlds.
Few interesting things on that. Three of the four were from Pennsylvania.
Me and Haylie and Aubrey grew up wrestling together, and we have Danny. So it's like the East, and it's kind of cool. And we kind of like invited Danny into PA for the trip.
As you said, all U20 World Team members, but they're all going to different colleges, which I think is interesting. Jeff currently at McKendree. You have Jordan Faust going to Grand Valley State, which is a program on the rise. You have Lehigh with Aubre Krazer, and you have Danny Nugent going down to Oklahoma State for the club program. So again, it just reinforces how unique the women's wrestling landscape is and how everyone's just going to different places and how all this is materializing. And you've said that before. We don't know how this is going to end up. We don't have any indicator of what's going to happen. We hope Oklahoma State adds a women's wrestling program in the future, but then you'd have Lehigh adding D1 this year, so it's going to be their first season. Grand Valley State's in their second season. And it's just fun to see how a rising this college wrestling scene is becoming.
And we'll see how it ultimately plays out. But it's very exciting stuff. There's a lot of opportunities for these young ladies and the up and coming young ladies as they're moving towards the college ranks. And they're only going to get more. So it's exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing Lehigh, in the first season with Jimenez, Crazer. I mean, that alone is insane. And there's more.
And it's good to have just leveled competition because you really were seeing everything just getting Iowa top heavy and everything's gravitating toward there. If you can get Oklahoma State, Tarleton State still on the docket to potentially get it this season. Let's just hope that happens. They're in the works to possibly making it a Division I program. That would change things because you'd have an Anya Drury in the fold and some of the other transfers. So it could be interesting this year. It really still is going to be the University of Iowa's. I don't see anything disrupting that at this point until maybe you add an Oklahoma State and you get Lehigh solidified. It's going to be Iowa. And then you still have Kylie Welker and Kennedy Blades and Brianna Gonzalez. You just have three final Xers in the lineup. It's just so difficult to overcome that. But when you get an Audrey Jimenez in the fold where she's as good as anyone on the University of Iowa, it just might be they don't have as many as the University of Iowa. I just think you get more of that with different programs. It's just going to be fun to watch. And we didn't talk about this enough, I think, with the new college wrestling format. 180 qualifiers, 18 woman brackets. It's going to be at Extreme Arena the first weekend in March. But thinking about how that plays out and just how the Division III component plays into that, I think we have to appreciate this upcoming season for what it's going to be because it definitely is going to change. Men's Division III is separated, and you would expect that's going to happen, if not in the 27 season and the 28 season. So appreciate what we have with that, but it will be interesting after that to see what's going to happen and to see if those D3 programs scatter, because I think the best girls, they want to be at the best programs. They want to be at the highest level. So if you are a good girl at a Division III program, are you going to stay and just be in a D3 tournament only?
I don't know. I don't think people are going to necessarily transfer or leave. I think it might be attrition where you get the moving forward. If you have more Division I teams, they'll tend to go where they can get scholarship money to the better, to the power schools, and then maybe you're recruiting a little bit lesser. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I'm not convinced it's going to happen so fast. Like I don't just write off North Central. I think it may take time. I hope they don't split up too early until we build up enough Division I and II teams, because that would make that tournament really not necessarily weak in terms of talent, but in terms of depth and size. I don't want to see a split off. I think you only have, 10 teams in the tournament or 12, 15 teams, between 1 and 2. I want to see that built up before we split. So we'll see how it works out.
But hypothetically, let's just say it happened this way. Let's say this split happened and Yelena Makoyed was at Division III North Central and it happened. Does she want to go and win a Division III championship, or does she want to take her chances against Kylie Welker and win a Division I/II championship? I think that's the decision that these top D3 girls are going to have to make.
Okay, but let's use her. Perfect example. Yelena Makoyed is very tight with Joe Norton. She's been at the program for years. Let's just say she had 1 year of eligibility left. Liked North Central, liked the coach, liked her teammates, maybe wants to coach thereafter. Do you really think she's going to transfer and leave that team for 1 year just to finish? I think it's unlikely.
It might be, but I think Joe would also, because he wants her to reach the highest level, would say, you got to take this opportunity. I would think.
She's won 4 international tournaments, in a row at one point. She's been at the highest level. The highest level is not college Division I wrestling. So she's beyond that. I don't think she would deserve. I'm talking to my, what. So I don't know, but I don't think that is the highest level.
Probably, but I just think that's the decision that's going to have to happen here as it moves forward. I think that's going to be what's compelling, and it really affects North Central the most since they've been the
Yes.
most competitive against
Yeah.
all those. There's a couple others. I mean, hey, look, Lexi Janiak is in that situation at Aurora. They're Division III. Would she want to if she was in
Does she have 1 year left?
She has 1 year, and it just depends.
But let me ask you this question. So let's say, so literally, okay, let's just say the only person, I'm going to use an extreme example, the only person that can beat or is close is Welker against Makoyed, right? So she's literally transferring colleges to kill everybody else in Division I, but just so she can wrestle Welker, who she's wrestled anyway many times in senior tournaments. If you're happy where you are at the school you are, likes the coach, likes the environment, do you really transfer just so you get to wrestle Welker twice, 3 times? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the question, and it depends on where it happens.
And if somebody throws money at her, maybe if somebody throws her $50K or $25K, I don't know.
But you're right. The landscape does affect how you make your decision. So if Oklahoma State happens to add and Yelena Makoyed, there's an opportunity and you get some NIL money. I think Joe Norton would be the first person to say, Yelena, you have to go.
Yeah. So then they're pulling like a Wyatt Hendrickson.
Yeah, exactly.
Buying a heavyweight.
By the way, I'm assuming you know who John Smith is. 6-time world and Olympic champion. There's a great story.
In a row.
There's a great story about Yelena Makoyed. She went down for Final X in 2022, and she did not know who John Smith was.
When I was talking to him, I didn't know who he was until way after. I remember going to OSU, I think. Is that what it is? OSU for Final X. And this man with a southern accent in cowboy boots and the cowboy hat came up to my coaches and I, and he was like, let me give you guys a tour around the school. I was like, oh, cool. Like some tour guide. That's cool. And so he's like taking us around and I was like seeing his face like on the walls and like everywhere. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's you. And then, later my coaches are like, do you know who that was? And they were like, shame on you for not knowing who John Smith is. He's only like one of the greatest wrestlers in American history. And I was like, wow, shame on me. And so I went and listened to a bunch of podcasts and his wrestling videos, and I was so inspired. And then I started like trying out those low singles during international competition. I remember I went and tried it in Spain and Italy, and they worked pretty well. So thank you, John Smith. I did take a picture with him too. Joe was like, take a picture with him. I was like, why? Like, I don't know who he is. And then afterwards, I was like, thank God Joe made me take this picture.
An iconic wrestling story.
That's great.
An iconic wrestling story that
yes, for sure.
Now we have other great events coming up. We have Junior Nationals, the U.S. Marine Corps Junior Nationals coming up on July 12th through the 19th. And we look back at a few of the results. We'll go through a few of those, but let's just talk about one name right now that many people may not know about. She won double brackets in 2018. It's Alexis Zepeda. She won the cadet women at 122 and the junior women at 122. Look at the names she beat in the cadet women or placed ahead of. Nenea Estrella, Maggie Palmore, Melanie Mendoza, Lana Perez, Sophia Macaluso. In the junior division, Allie Howe, Cam Guerin, who's a 4-time national champion, Peyton Stroud, Ainsley Lane. That's just to name a few. She ripped through the tournament, and you can look through here. I think she teched or pinned everyone except for Allie Howe, and she won 8-0 in the finals. I think you remember this in 2018. What's your recollection of Alexis Zepeda?
I vividly remember this because this was 2018. We didn't go that year. Michaela was on the world team or something. I think we were in, or there was something going on. We didn't go. And I saw this girl. I didn't really know who she was. And I see her rip through the cadet tournament, just killing everybody. I'm like, wow, how good is this? How good is she? Then she wrestled the junior tournament. I'm like, she'll be tested. Hauck is a U23 world medalist. She became Cam 4-time champ. Amanda Walker, who took fourth, was actually really good. Very good upper body throws. I've seen her beat some good people. You said Stroud Lane. I'm literally watching her in the final, just dismantling people. Like she took Cam Guerin, who was really good, made age group world teams. And then it's like she disappeared from the face of the earth. And then one day you and I were just talking like, whatever happened to that girl? Because Zepeda's like, there's other people with that name. It wasn't, that I've seen, it's a fairly, I don't want to say common, but you see the name. And you and I started talking about it. And I thought it was one of these situations where she won these tournaments and, kind of disappeared from the face of the earth. Like, this singer Rodriguez in the documentary Finding Sugar Man. The guy was a legendary rocker, just disappeared. Then they made a documentary about him 25 years later. It's like, I'm like, Kyle, this is your job. You have to find out what on earth happened to this woman who literally annihilated the field in a very tough way to Fargo, in cadets and juniors. And I didn't think I figured, all right, she's good as a cadet, so she'll get killed in juniors, and she wiped everybody up, dominated Houck. And Alicia Houck was really hard to score on, and she scored 8 points on her and gave up none. So you kind of did a little bit of a dive. I had you calling coaches, looking up data, and it turned out she wrestled, she did wrestle. And she wrestled in college, and I still don't know what happened. Either this was just the weirdest tournament in the history of the world, or she just lost interest, had injuries. I really don't know exactly. One would have thought she'd be like, this is like almost Taina Fernandez type stuff, except she wasn't beating seniors at the time,
She's 15 years old. And then I think she wrestled maybe in Super 32. And then there was just no results until she got to college, I think somewhere out in Oregon. And then that program dropped. And so I think it was Corbin or some college like that. And then they dropped and just haven't heard. So, Fargo legend that just doesn't get brought up much, double brackets. And we'll put a kind of a link to the article if you want to go read it. But Kevin Black has some interesting comments about what he thought about how good she was, because he was in awe of what she did at Fargo too.
Yeah, he was coaching Houck, who got dismantled. So and I remember I put you up to this, and you actually called her, I believe, or her father, I think, who didn't take the call.
Yeah, nobody answered. So yeah, I'd still like to know.
Well, we did try to track her down. I'd love to be. We don't do guests on the show, but we could. If she would call in or agree to be on the show for 10 minutes or 5 minutes, we could do a one-off exception, just because this is one of the biggest conundrums I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I'd love to figure that one out. Now, going way back too, we also looked at some Fargo results. As we're talking about making sure that you realize that wins and losses are not fatal, 2 future Olympic gold medalists lost in the 2010 Fargo finals. Sarah Hildebrandt lost 3-2 to 2-1 to Kayla Brenlinger. And then Tamyra Mensah, who is now Tamyra Mensah stock, lost to Krista Ravel of Kansas 2-0-2-0. Don't know if you remember the old ball draw era, but you had to win periods at that time. So thank goodness we're through that. But they both lost in the Fargo finals, and they both went on to win Olympic gold medals.
Just shows you, though, people develop differently. Coach Marquez actually, I think, took a period against Hildebrandt before getting stuck.
Correct.
In 2011 as well.
And then Kayla Miracle goes first, second, third, first, second, second. So she has some losses at Fargo, so it wasn't fatal for her. She made 2 Olympic teams as a two-time and is a 2-time world silver medalist. And even just a precursor to what we consider one of the great matchups, Sage Mortimer and Samara Chavez. They wrestled to a 12-7 match, and we know what they've done. I think as it stands right now, Mortimer is 6-0 against her former teammates Chavez. So you just don't know how things are going to play out.
In 2015, I remember it was a semifinal match. Gracie Figueroa, my daughter, made the finals on the other side of the bracket. It was going to be Figueroa was wrestling Dom Parrish, and it was Dom was a senior. They were 9th graders, Figueroa and Michaela. Figueroa is losing near the edge of the match, forced Parrish to make the finals, and based on horrible seeding, somehow Michaela was on the other side from both of them and made the finals, and Gracie checked her. But the point is that was a legendary match. Callie, the new guard versus the older guard, and Paris took third that year, and then is a world champion.
It's kind of crazy. In 2021, Lexi Janiak has a tech over Sofia Macaluso, and then they don't see each other, and then they wrestle 3 times this year. So you just never know how these things are going to play out. So when you look at these Fargo results, just know there's a good chance that down the road we're going to look back at those and find those interesting.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun where you really look back. And these results are also a little weird with Fargo because they're right around when the cadet and the junior, world championships are. Some people don't go. I remember one time Tashia Allo won the cadet worlds and flew in and went straight to the wrestling mat, and she took out Miracle one of those years, and literally doing that. But it's cool because for the most part, people don't come out of absolute nowhere. People that are wrestling at the next level have wrestled in this tournament, at some point. The one thing I don't like what they do now, they have the tournament so you can't wrestle both. They have the cadets and juniors kind of at the same time. Back then, one was after the other, and girls could enter both tournaments because they can't wrestle. There's no Greco for women at this, in this tournament. So the men can wrestle both, and be a double champ. The double championship for the women used to be cadets and juniors. And now they got rid of it. I don't like that. I like the way they used to do it. I think you should be able to wrestle both. It's good experience. And, these trips are expensive, and let people stay there and wrestle a little bit.
Either way, mark your calendars, July 12th through 19th, live on FloWrestling, the U.S. Marine Corps Junior National Championships in Fargo, North Dakota, affectionately known as Fargo. We'll end with this, Scott. There was footage that we found of you going off on a referee while Michaela Beck was wrestling. After a match, you went off. We're going to show the clip here, but what do you remember about that, Scott?
It was 35 seconds. I thought it was 5 to 10 seconds. It was 35 seconds from when that action happened to when they continued to when it was stopped, started up, and stalemated. That's not the rule. There's a rule book. And you have 5 to 10 seconds. You don't have 35 seconds. You do not. I'm 100% correct. I know the rule. That's not the rule.
Yeah, so I remember it's the quarterfinals. Tried to make a junior world team, and she was wrestling this one, Naya Teresita Gaines, I think, who's very tough. It's gone up a lot of weight class, very scrappy, and she kind of had an awkward style. Bottom line is they basically challenged something. It was a crotch lift or an exposure that they thought Michaela was exposed, extended on a leg. And the problem was they challenged it after they started wrestling again and stopped it, started wrestling again and stopped it. So I don't know if they had the 5-second rule, but you can't wrestle the rest of the match and go back and challenge it, which is what they did. They challenged the call way after multiple stoppages, which is against the rules. And it was kind of it's horrible because this is a world team qualifier. The referee, it's probably worst officiating I've ever seen in my life. And yeah, we're pretty pissed off after the fact. And, that night was tough. And if she would have lost that match, then she got exposed again. The match was closer than it should have been. And yeah, I was pretty pissed off. I don't like incompetence, and the referee should know the rules. And he didn't want to hear it. Nobody wanted to talk about it. It was just utter arrogance and horrible refereeing.